Okay, welcome back, kiddos. Now we are moving on to 7.2. We're going to talk about properties of parallelograms. So you may be asking yourself, what is a parallelogram? Okay, so parallelograms are all these shapes right here. Okay, so think about what those may have in common as we get into that. Okay, so we talked about what a quadrilateral is, right? We know quadrilateral means that it has four sides, right? Okay, so now we're going to talk about, we talked about last time about trapezoids, and we know the characteristics of trapezoids. Main thing is it has one pair of parallel sides. Okay, well, parallelogram has these features, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So these are the properties of all parallelograms. So first off, this is the basic shape that we're going to think of when we see a parallelogram, and so that's what indicates parallelogram. So as we said, it's a quadrilateral in which two pairs of opposite sides are congruent. Okay, so two pairs of opposite sides. So we can say like this side right here, right, BC and AD, those are congruent, right? So we can say, we can put those with the two hash marks right there, right? So we know congruent means same length. Okay, so congruents are the same length. So which ones? We're going to say BC and AD. So BC and AD, segment BC and AD. All right, but we have two pairs. So what's the other one? Okay, AB and CD. So we can mark that with a 1 on those. That shows that those are both congruent. So we would say AB is congruent with CD. Okay, so two pairs of opposite sides. Then also two pairs of opposite angles are congruent. Okay, so opposite angles. So the A and C. So let's put like one arc for A and one arc for C. So we could say angle A is congruent with angle C. Okay, and then we said there were two pairs, right? So that's one pair. So the other pair would be these right here. But since those are different, let's go ahead and mark those with 2, right? 2 on that one. So we would say angle B is congruent with angle D. Okay? All right, next. 4 pairs of consecutive angles are supplementary. Okay, 4 pairs of consecutive angles. So we know supplementary means adds to 180, right? Adds 180 degrees. So 4 pairs of consecutive angles. And we know consecutive means in order. Okay, listed in order. Okay, so we're going to say like AB. These two angles add up to 180. So we could say angle A and angle B, angle A plus angle B, right, equals 180 degrees. Right, what else? A and B are consecutive. Then also B and C. So angle B and angle C plus angle C equals 180 degrees. Right, but we said there's 4, so these two, right? These two. Then also C and D add to 180. So we can say angle C plus angle D equals 180 degrees. And then our last one, right? We said those two. Then these two also add up to 180 degrees. So angle A and angle D. So angle A plus angle D equals 180 degrees. Okay? And then our last feature of all parallelograms, 2 diagonals that bisect each other. Okay, so if they bisect each other, that means they cut in half. Okay, cut in half. So if they bisect each other, so imagine this. If we had this diagonal right here, right, that goes right across there, and we have this diagonal right here that goes across there, then we could say wherever that crosses, it cuts this in half, right? So if, say we said this one has 4 lines, right? Then this one would also have 4 lines, right? If this one had 3 lines, then this one would have 3 lines, right? So they, wherever they cross, it cuts that one in half. All right, so those are the characteristics of any Quadrilateral. Okay, 2 pairs of sides that are congruent, 2 pairs of opposite angles that are congruent, 4 pairs of consecutive angles that are supplementary, and the diagonals bisect themselves. Okay, next. So that's any parallelogram. Okay, so now a type of parallelogram that we're going to talk about today is a rhombus. Okay, so that's one of them. Okay, so a rhombus is a parallelogram with all congruent sides. Okay, so that means all the sides are equal if they're all congruent. So all sides are equal. All sides have equal length. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get right into some practice just like we do. So now first we're going to talk about the angle measures. Okay, so what did we say about the angles? Let's take a look. It says this is a parallelogram. Okay, so we know that we're going to use those properties of parallelograms. It says angle MNP is 30. So let's kind of trace that out. MNP, right? And that one's 30 degrees, right? It makes sense. They want us to find PLM. So PLM. Okay, so they want us to find this angle right here, right? X. Okay, so what do we know? Well, if it's a parallelogram, we know these opposite angles are congruent. Right? Opposite angles are congruent, so X equals 30 degrees as well. Okay, because opposite angles are congruent. That's what we talked about right over here, right? We said opposite angles are congruent. All right, next, let's take a look at this one right over here. Okay, so let's see which one of those that we would use for this. So this says, in parallelogram RSTU, right? So it goes from RSTU, that's what we're talking about right here. It says URS is 10. URS. Okay, that's 10 degrees. Okay. They want us to find X. Find TUR, TUR. Well, what do we know about these? These are consecutive angles, right? And so we know consecutive angles are supplementary, right? So we know that 180 minus 10 equals 170. Right, so that's our answer. It's 170 degrees. All right, so that's it on that. So if we recognize that we talked about opposite angles are congruent and consecutive angles are supplementary. Okay? Opposite angles are congruent and 2 pairs of 4 pairs of those, and then the 2 diagonals bisect. All right, so let's keep that in mind as you do this practice first. Okay, and once you got that down, let's go ahead and move on to this next page. Okay, so let's take a look at over here now that we have that. All right, so let's use the properties. We said, and now we're going to talk about the diagonal measures. Okay, so using the properties of diagonals, we said that the diagonals do what? Diagonals bisect each other. They bisect each other. All right, so let's take a look. It says in this parallelogram, right? So then we know we're talking about those qualities. It says KH is 24. So KH, let's trace that out. That goes from K to H, right? So we can say this whole thing right over here is 24. Right? That whole thing is equal to 24. They want us to find KL. Okay, so let's put a highlighter on KL. What are we trying to find? We're just trying to find that. Okay, well, if this is a diagonal and this is a diagonal, that means that's right in the middle, right? So if the whole thing, if we go from H to K and the whole thing is 24, that means if this is L, this means it has to be 12, right? And that means it has to be 12 because we would say 24 divided by 2, which is equal to 12. That's it. Once we recognize that it bisects, that's all we got to know. All right, next it says in this parallelogram, TV is 9. All right, so this is going to the next level on this one. It says T to V, right? If we trace that out, that much is 9, right? So that's 9. They want us to find TR. Okay, well, let's highlight TR. TR goes from there to there, right? So if this much is 9, right? I'm sorry, if that much is 9, that means this much has to be 9, right? So we would say if it's R, V, C, right? If this is 9 and this is 9, that means the whole thing is 18. Okay? It's as simple as that. We just have to recognize what they're trying to find. All right, let's do those practice before we move on to the last part. All right, so now we're getting into the tougher stuff, but we got this. Just now we're going to use the properties of sides and angles both. All right, so let's see. Let's go and go through these. Let's see what we talked about and what we remember. All right. Okay, so see if you can get this first one on your own. I've already told you how to do it. Let's see. All right, so it says find the length of the 3 missing sides of the rhombus. Okay, what do we know about a rhombus? We know all sides are equal in length. All sides are equal in length. Okay, so if all sides are equal in length, if this is 90, then this has to be 90. Right? Y has to be equal to 90 as well. Right? So then if this is 90, then how much is x? That also has to be equal to 90, right? And then z has to be equal to 90, right? And I'm going to put that line through there so I know that it's a z, right? And z instead of a 2, right? So those are our answers. Okay, y is 90, x is 90, and z is 90 because all sides are equal in length on a rhombus. All right, hopefully you got that one on your own. Otherwise, let's keep it moving. All right, let's see here. It says find the measure of the 3 missing angles of a rhombus. Okay, well, we have to remember that a rhombus is still a parallelogram, right? And we know that the angles, what do we know about the angles? We said the angles, opposite angles are congruent. And we know consecutive angles are supplementary. Right? Okay, so let's keep that in mind. It says, find the measures of the missing angles of this rhombus. All right, well, let's see what we know first, right? We know 87, and we're trying to figure out the other ones. We know opposite angles are congruent, consecutive angles are supplementary. So if these two right here, these are opposite, so that means z equals 87 degrees, right? We know that has to be true. Okay, next, we know that these two are consecutive. Consecutive, right? So if those are consecutive, that means they add up to 180, right? So I would say 180 minus 87, which will give me 93 degrees, and that would be what x is equal to, right? X is going to be equal to 93 degrees, right? And then what about y? Well, if x equals 93, then we could say that y also has to be 93 degrees, right? Because those are opposite. Those are opposite each other. Okay, so that's how we use our math knowledge on that. All right, let's keep it moving. It says find the length of the 2 missing sides in this parallelogram, right? So what do we know about parallelograms? On the sides, we know that opposite sides are equal in length. All right, so if these are true, that means y has to be equal to 7 as well because those are congruent sides, opposite sides, right? And then if this is 6, that means x has to be equal to 6 as well, right? X equals 6 and y equals 7. All right, let's keep it moving. Okay, hopefully it seems like it's very easy. That's because you're getting this. All right, keep it moving. Find the value of x, y, and z. These are the toughest ones. Now, these look kind of gross, but I know we can do this. So let's make it happen. Let's see what we're trying to find the value of x, y, and z. What do we know? Okay, we know that's 3. Okay, it says it's a rhombus. Rhombus tells us all sides are what? Different or the same? All sides are equal. Okay, that means these are equal length. Right? So let's start with this one first. 2y minus 7 equals 3. All we got to do is make an equation, right? So we're going to say negative 2y minus 7 equals 3. Right? So that's the hardest part, is just setting it up. Now let's just do our basic math, right? We're going to add 7 to both sides. Right? Cancels out. Negative 2y equals 10. You may already know what this is before we type it in, right? We're going to cancel that. We know divided by 2 is half. All right, so that will give us 5, and then a positive divided by a negative is a negative, right? So y equals 2. All right, now what do we know? Well, if we know that these are both equal, right? But we don't know what z is or x is. But we do know that all the sides are equal. So we know that 8x minus 5 also equals 3, right? So 8x minus 5 equals 3. So now let's just do the math, right? We're going to add 5. Add 5. Cancels. 8x equals 8. So that means x equals 1, right? Next, what else do we know? We know that 7z minus 4 equals 3 because all sides are equal, right? Let's keep it moving. So we're going to say 7z minus 4 equals 3. All right, so now let's just do the math. You got this. See if you can get this one on your own first. All right, cancel. 7z equals 7. Right, so that means z equals 1. Right, so that's it. It took a very difficult looking problem and just made it simple. Okay, and don't be concerned that these values are negative, because you might think, some of y'all might be thinking, well, how can a side be negative? But it's not the side. Right? We didn't say the side is negative. We said negative 2 times negative 5, which is positive 10 minus 7 gives us 3. Right? All right, keep it moving. Find the value of x, y, and z in this. See if you can get this one on your own. Okay, well, what do we know about a parallelogram? Parallelogram means that opposite sides are congruent. Right? So let's look at what we know, right? We know 38. That's what we have to start with. We know 38. So we know that these have to be equal because those are opposite sides, right? So let's start with that. We're going to say negative 2y minus 2 equals 38, right? Okay, now we can just do the simple math on that. We're going to add 2, cancels negative 2y equals 40. You may already know what the answer is, right? Divided by 2 gives us half, right? So half of 40 is 20, and positive divided by a negative gives us a negative. Right? Let's keep it moving. What do we know about these two? Right? We know they have to be equal, right? So we could say negative 8x plus 8 equals 32, right? So go ahead and pause, see if you got this one. All right, we're going to subtract 8. Subtract 8 cancels. Negative 8x equals 24. You may already know this if you know your 8s, right? We're going to divide by negative 8, cancels. X equals 24 divided by 8 is 3. And since it's a positive divided by negative, it's going to give us a negative. Right? And then we got our last one, right? Oh, that's it, right? X and Y, just 2. All right, boom, we're just moving along, and simple, right? Once you have the right perspective, things become much simpler for ourselves. All right, let's keep that in mind. Let's go to X, Y, and Z in this parallelogram. Ooh, does that look undoable? No, of course it's not undoable, right? What do we know about these? Are these sides or angles? These are all angles, and then we know that these opposites, angles, are congruent, right? So if we're trying to solve for x, and we know 99, right? We're going to start with what we know. We know that that's 99, so we can say negative x plus 10 equals 99. Now, the first thing I may want to do is I may want to put a 1 there. in front of that, right? Just to get my mind right. Okay, so now I just subtract 10, cancels, negative 1x equals 89, right? And then so I know that positive 1x, if I divide both sides by negative 1, it's just the opposite of both sides, right? So x equals negative 89. Some of y'all may have already found that out first before you typed that we did that, but that's great if we didn't. Hopefully you recognize that now. All right, next, what do we know? Okay, so now if we're looking at y and z, I don't know what y is, and I don't know what z is, so I can't solve for two variables at the same time. But what do we know about these two? We know that these two are consecutive angles equal 180, right? So we can say negative 2y plus 3 plus 99 equals 180, right? We're looking at our relationships, right? So then we just combine our like terms, right? I have positive 3 and positive 99. That gives us positive 102. I'm going to bring down the negative 2y equals 180, right? Then I subtract 102, subtract 102, 2, right? And so that cancels out. So negative 2y equals 78, right? So then divide both sides by negative 2, right? Cancels out. Y equals positive divided by positive, negative gives us a negative 39, right? And then our last one. Now we can get to z. Now, so we could plug y back into there if we wanted to and then figure that out and say those are equal. Or we can just recognize that these two are also consecutive angles, right? And so we know that they equal 180, right? So we can say negative 9z plus 9 plus 99 equals 180, right? Okay, so you got this. See if you get this last one on your own. Pause. All right, so we're going to add both of those together, right? We're going to say that's positive 108. Okay, and then we bring down the negative 9z equals 180. Right, then we subtract our 108. Subtract 108. Cancels, negative 9z equals 72. Right? And so you may already know this if you know your nines, right? So we're just going to divide both sides by negative 9. Cancels, so z equals 72 divided by 9 is 8, and positive divided by negative gives us a negative. So that's our answer. All right, so all we're going to do is just follow our math. We're going to recognize that in these two pairs of opposite sides are congruent, two pairs of opposite angles are congruent, 4 pairs of consecutive angles are supplementary, and the diagonals bisect each other. Okay, you got this. I know you do, so let me help you if you have any questions or ask your neighbors.